Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
This happened back in the early 2000s when I was around 11 or 12. My parents had recently divorced, and my dad had been dating this wonderful woman for almost a year. She had a son just a year younger than me, and even though they weren't married, I considered them like stepfamily at that point. We decided to go see a movie as a family. The theater had just started doing reserved seating, which was pretty new back then. My dad had booked our seats the day before, making sure we could all sit together. The seating arrangement was my dad's girlfriend, then my dad, then her son, and finally me at the end. After we got to our seats, my dad and his girlfriend put their jackets down to mark their spots and went to get everyone some snacks. My dad asked us kids to watch their seats while they were gone. That's when things started getting interesting. Shortly after they left, this family of three showed up, a mother and her two teenage sons who were probably around 16 or 17. One of the sons grabbed my dad's girlfriend's jacket, threw it on the floor, and sat in her seat. I politely asked the teen to check his ticket stub, explaining that the theater had reserved seating and that was where my dad's girlfriend was supposed to sit. The teen rudely replied that we were the ones in the wrong seats. When I tried explaining that my dad had our stubs and I was sure about the seating, the teen just told me to get out of his face. His brother jumped in, calling me a dumb brat. Their mother noticed the commotion and demanded to know why I was bothering her kids. I tried explaining the situation calmly, suggesting they might have accidentally sat in the wrong seats and asking if they could move over since her son was in my dad's girlfriend's reserved spot. The mother insisted they had reserved those seats and refused to move. The teen told me to get lost. I asked if I could at least pick up the jacket from the floor, but the teen ignored me. When I tried to pick it up anyway, he started kicking at my arms and head. He yelled at me to stop trying to touch him, while his mother screamed at me to leave her kids alone. His brother falsely accused me of trying to bite his brother. When my dad and his girlfriend returned about 10 minutes later, they immediately noticed something was wrong. His girlfriend asked what was going on, while my dad questioned why someone was sitting in her seat. After I explained everything, my dad tried handling the situation calmly. He confronted the mother about her son throwing the coat on the floor and taking the seat. The mother claimed they had reserved the seats and justified her son's actions, saying he had every right to move the ugly coat. My dad pointed out that her son had thrown it on the dirty floor and tried to kick me when I attempted to pick it up. The teen defended himself by falsely claiming I had tried to bite his legs. Thankfully, a theater employee who was actually the manager came over to help. When he asked to see everyone's ticket stubs, my dad showed all of ours. But when he asked the other family for theirs, the mother turned pale and claimed she had thrown them away after they were torn. The manager explained that patrons were supposed to keep their stubs for this exact reason and asked them to leave. The mother demanded to speak to the manager, only to be told she was already speaking to him. When they still refused to leave, the manager called security. As they were being escorted out, the mother completely lost it and threw a full bottle of soda that hit me right in the eye. My dad was furious and chased after them, but security caught everyone outside. The police came and took statements from everyone. With so many witnesses, it was clear who was at fault. The mother was arrested, and I later found out she got 6 months in jail for assaulting a minor, plus a fine and a lifetime ban from the theater. The theater gave us free tickets to come back another time, and we finally got to see the movie the next weekend, without any entitled people trying to steal our seats. After spending 5 years in the corporate world as a software developer, burning myself out with 80-hour work weeks and living off energy drinks, I finally hit my breaking point. My doctor warned me about my skyrocketing blood pressure and suggested I take some time off to decompress. That's when I remembered my colleague's story about finding inner peace at a meditation retreat in India. 2 months later, I found myself on a dusty road in rural India, heading to a 10-day silent meditation retreat. The facility was exactly what you'd expect. Simple, peaceful, and completely disconnected from the outside world. What I didn't expect was a massive ant colony that seemed to have claimed the entire property as their territory. These weren't your regular household ants. They were enormous, aggressive creatures that looked like they could carry off a small child if they worked together. The retreat staff, being devout Buddhists, refused to harm any living beings, including these monster ants. They were everywhere, in the gardens, the meditation halls, and yes, even in the plumbing. Every morning when I turned on the tap to brush my teeth, I had to wait for a parade of ants to march out before water would flow. Despite the six-legged residents, I was actually starting to find my peace. The silence was therapeutic, and I was beginning to understand why people raved about meditation. That is, until I encountered him, the man who would become my nemesis. He was a tall, well-built guy who carried himself like he owned the place. I dubbed him Mr. Important in my head, since we couldn't speak to learn each other's names. Our paths crossed during the evening meal queue on my third day. I was standing in line, mentally going through my meditation mantras, when I felt someone brush past me. Mr. Important had just cut right in front of me, acting like I was invisible. When he turned around to grab a plate, he gave me this smug little smirk that said, "What are you going to do about it?" I opened my mouth to protest but quickly remembered my vow of silence. All I could do was watch as he continued serving himself food, occasionally looking back at me with that irritating smirk. I was seething. The next few meditation sessions were torture. Instead of finding inner peace, all I could think about was that smug face and how I wanted to wipe that smirk off it. But then, watching an ant carry away a chunk of someone's dropped food, inspiration struck. The next morning during breakfast, I carefully pocketed several packets of sugar while making my chai. Back in my room, I mixed the sugar with water in my bottle until it became a thick, sweet syrup. The trap was set. During the afternoon meditation session, I deliberately stayed at the back of the line. Everyone had to remove their shoes before entering the meditation hall, and I carefully noted which pair belonged to Mr. Important. Expensive leather sandals that stood out among the modest footwear. Once everyone was inside, I quickly doused his sandals with the sugar syrup, making sure to get it deep into the straps where it wouldn't be visible. Then I went inside, struggling to maintain my composure as I meditated on my imminent revenge. 3 hours later, as we filed out of the hall, I pretended to adjust my shoes while watching him reach for his sandals. When he spotted the ants covering his footwear, he let out a startled yelp that made all the other meditators turn to look. He started cursing rapidly in Hindi, then tried to retrieve his sandals using a stick. The ants, apparently offended by this attempt, started climbing up the stick towards his hand. He dropped it like it was on fire and backed away, looking utterly bewildered. He continued cursing in Hindi while looking around accusingly, but I maintained a perfect meditation poker face while putting on my ant-free sandals. He had to walk barefoot all the way back to his room, doing this funny little dance every few steps to avoid the ants on the path. That evening, he showed up to dinner wearing a pair of borrowed plastic slippers, his previous swagger completely gone. For the remaining days of the retreat, he never cut in line again. In fact, he seemed to make a point of staying as far away from me as possible. I noticed him checking his shoes carefully before putting them on every single time, and my meditation improved dramatically after that. I've been working at this local print shop for 7 years. Started right after college, learned everything about the business from the ground up. The original owner was this sweet old man who treated us like family. We weren't just making money. We were serving the community, helping small businesses grow, and creating meaningful work for local artists. Everything changed when this hotshot businessman bought the place. He waltzed in one day, checked out the books for about 15 minutes, and decided he'd found his next project. The original owner was ready to retire, and I guess this guy made him an offer he couldn't refuse. My new boss had zero experience in printing. Zero. But he was convinced he knew better than everyone who'd been there for years. On his first day, he gathered us all in the break room. He announced that things were going to change around here, claiming the place had been running like a charity for too long and that we were going to start making real money. When I tried to explain that we actually had a very loyal customer base, he cut me off sharply, saying he hadn't asked for my opinion and bragging about how he'd turned around dozens of businesses. That was a lie. We later found out he'd never successfully turned around anything. He just burned through his inheritance buying and selling businesses, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. Within weeks, he doubled our prices, driving away our regular customers. He cut corners on quality using cheaper materials. He even fired our most experienced printer because he was making too much money. One day, I caught him trying to scam a local nonprofit that needed flyers for a fundraiser. He quoted them $2,000 for the job. When the client pointed out that they were quoted $500 just last month, he dismissively told them that prices had gone up and they could take it or leave it. I couldn't help but intervene, explaining that there had been no change in material costs and that the old quote was still valid. The look he gave me could have frozen hell over. After the client left, without placing the order obviously, he called me into his office. He threatened me, saying if I ever undermined him like that again, I'd be done. He even went further, warning that I'd have trouble finding another job in this industry once he was through with me. I quit the next day. But that wasn't enough for him. He started telling other print shops in the area that I'd stolen client information. He posted negative reviews about me on industry forums. He even called one of my new potential employers to warn them about me. That's when I had my brilliant idea. This guy had one annoying habit. He always parked his expensive sports car across multiple spots, usually taking up 3 spaces to protect his investment. It drove everyone nuts. So I had some business cards printed at his competitor's shop naturally. Simple professional-looking cards that read, "You park like a jerk. Give me a call for a free parking lesson." And underneath, his personal cell phone number. I started small, putting them on badly parked cars at the local mall, then expanded to the grocery store, movie theater, and anywhere else I spotted terrible parking jobs. I must have distributed hundreds of these cards over the months. The results were better than I could have imagined. A friend who still worked at the shop told me the whole thing. They described how he was constantly getting calls from angry people and had to change his voicemail message 3 times because he kept getting more and more frustrated. His latest voicemail was apparently just him yelling that he didn't leave any card on anyone's car, demanding people stop calling this number and threatening to press charges for harassment. He can't figure out who's doing it. He's accused at least 5 different ex-employees, but he can't prove anything. He's even called the police, but they just told him there's nothing illegal about giving out his publicly available business number. The cherry on top came last week. Apparently, he got so paranoid about the calls that he started parking properly, taking up just 1 space like a normal person. But that wasn't even the best part. The constant stream of angry calls started affecting his business reputation. People began looking him up online after calling the number, finding all the negative reviews about how he treated his employees and customers. Now he's trying to sell the print shop at a massive loss. My friend told me the business was in shambles and that nobody wanted to work with him anymore. They mentioned he was even talking about moving to another state to start fresh. I responded, trying not to smile, that someone should really teach him how to park properly. I still keep a stack of those cards in my car. You never know when you might spot someone parked like a jerk who could use a free lesson. I've always been a dog person. When I turned 12, my parents finally got me a golden retriever. That dog taught me the concept of unconditional love, and when she passed away during my senior year of college, I was devastated. It took me 2 years to feel ready for another dog. That's when I found my current companion at a local shelter, a sweet 3-year-old mixed breed who had been abandoned. The moment our eyes met, I knew she was meant to be mine. She helped me through my quarter-life crisis, my first heartbreak, and my career change from corporate finance to freelance graphic design. My best friend and I have known each other since college. We've been through everything together: family drama, career struggles, failed relationships, you name it. She was there for me when my first dog passed away and even helped me pick out my current dog 8 years ago. That's why her recent behavior has left me completely blindsided. 3 months ago, she began dating this new guy. At first, everything seemed fine. She was happy, and that's all I wanted for her. But things took a weird turn when she started bringing him to our weekly coffee meetups. The first time I met him, he immediately wrinkled his nose and commented that I must be the one with the dog, saying he could smell it on my clothes. I was taken aback but tried to be polite, confirming that yes, I had a dog who'd been with me for 8 years. He then went on to express his disgust for dogs, declaring that they were unhygienic and carried diseases, wondering aloud how people could live with them. My friend just sat there, giggling awkwardly. I changed the subject, but that was just the beginning. A week later, my friend called me. She hesitantly brought up the need to discuss something important. When I asked what was wrong, she mentioned her boyfriend's feelings about dogs. After I acknowledged this, she suggested that maybe it was time for me to consider finding a new home for my dog. I thought she was joking at first and asked her why I would ever do that. She explained that it was making things complicated because her boyfriend didn't want to visit my place, and he complained about the dog smell when I visited them. She even started parroting his opinion about dogs being unhygienic. When I reminded her that she had helped me adopt my dog, she dismissed it by saying that people change and sometimes need to make sacrifices for love. She insisted that she really thought he was the one. That conversation was just the start of a relentless campaign. She began sending me links to shelters multiple times a day. She'd call me with amazing opportunities where someone was looking for an older dog to adopt. One morning I woke up to 12 messages from her. The messages were a barrage of manipulation. She told me about a supposedly amazing family looking for a dog with a huge backyard, repeatedly begged me to think about it, and questioned whether a pet was more important than our friendship. She called me selfish, reminded me of our 15-year friendship, pointed out that my dog had already had 8 good years with me, and asked if I didn't want her to be happy. She even mentioned that her boyfriend was hinting at proposing soon but couldn't stand coming to her place when I visited because of the dog smell. She accused me of choosing an animal over my best friend and called me stubborn. I finally had enough and called her. When I said we needed to talk about the messages, she eagerly assumed I had come to my senses. She started talking about a shelter before I could finish. I cut her off and explained that I had indeed realized something important, that my dog had shown more loyalty in 8 years than she had in 15. I pointed out that my dog had never asked me to choose between friends or tried to manipulate me, and had been there every time she had cancelled our plans for her new boyfriend. She got angry and accused me of comparing her to a dog. I agreed it was unfair, to the dog who had never betrayed me. She then tried to threaten me, saying I would regret this and end up alone with nobody but my stupid dog. I corrected her, reminding her about the dog walking group I joined last year, the one she had dismissed as a waste of time. I told her they had become real friends who would never ask me to abandon a family member for someone they'd known for 3 months. When she scoffed at my use of family member and insisted it was just a dog, I told her that she was just someone I used to know and said goodbye. I blocked her number after that. Through mutual friends, I heard she's been telling everyone I chose a dog over 15 years of friendship. What she doesn't realize is that I didn't choose my dog over her. I chose my self-respect. 2 weeks after our falling out, one of our mutual friends told me that her boyfriend had broken up with her. Apparently, he'd been seeing someone else the whole time, and his issue with my dog was just an excuse to keep me away because he was afraid I'd notice something was off about him. She tried to apologize, sent me a long email about how sorry she was and how she'd been blinded by love. I never responded. Instead, I took my dog to the park, where we met up with our walking group friends for a picnic. As I watched her play with the other dogs, I realized that sometimes losing a friend isn't really a loss at all, especially when they show you that they were never really your friend to begin with. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.